Good morning, New Zealand. I was going to say welcome to the start of the week, but then I just realised it's Wednesday, middle of the week. That's an even better thought. We're almost at the weekend. Anyway, it is Wednesday morning, and this is Daybreak. Right, straight into it. October the 29th. Hope you had a great long weekend and caught up with Simon O'Connor on solid ground yesterday. Good morning to everybody from around the country. Apparently it's a windy Auckland day, according to Darren, but I haven't actually looked out the window, so I'll check outside the studio after this. All right, news today. Big story in the New Zealand Herald. The New Zealand Initiative thinks we should go to a 4-year parliamentary term and wants 50 more MPs. I mean, 50 more MPs, that's not going to go down well, is it? I mean, that's almost barking mad. But look, just deal with the 4-year parliamentary term. A lot of people have suggested this. The fact of the matter is we actually have a 3-year, a 6-year and a 9-year parliamentary term. What do I mean by that? Because if you do a good job after 3 years, you get re-elected. And so in effect, you have 6 years. And if you do a good job after that, you get re-elected and you have 9 years. 4 years, can you imagine if we'd had 4 years of Jacinda and then she got re-elected? That would have been 8 years. And the problem with our parliament is that they are the final arbiter on everything. And so they can ram through radical laws, like, for example, the anti-smacking law, the radical abortion law, and there's no upper house. There's no accountability. And so I will always be against 4-year terms until either we have binding referendums so that the people can speak and hold Parliament accountable, or we have an upper house so that there's a level of accountability in our Parliament. But while there's one house, 3 years, and I will campaign strongly against any extension to that. Interested to know what you think of that. As Ian Lewis has just said, 50 more MPs. Imagine the cost. Imagine the fights and the hysterics that we're already seeing in Parliament. I'll come back to that. Labor has come out with another tax proposal. Whatever you think of capital gains tax, here's the thing. Why do they keep changing their mind on it? There was a summary of different leaders and their different positions on it in the Labour Party, and it's back and forth and back and forth. It's kind of like, if it's a good idea, make it a policy and promote it every election. But they keep changing their mind because they haven't even convinced themselves. But here's a quote from... Actually, I'll just put this over here so I'm looking in the right direction. Here's a quote from Chris Hipkins that says, "I'm confirming today that under a government I lead, there will be no wealth or capital gains tax." This is in 2023. So it's kind of like he's read the tea leaves. And now they do want a capital gains tax. Do I support a capital gains tax? Look, I think if you are dealing with family homes, even an investment property, for example, a retired couple may have an investment property, maybe a family batch. I think you're getting into danger there. And look, if you're dealing with landlords who have numbers of properties and, it's almost their business, yeah, that's slightly different. But one of the other things is Labor is saying that all the money from the capital gains tax raised by the capital gains tax will go to doctor's visits. Oh, and by the way, the doctor's visits are for the most wealthy people in New Zealand who probably already have health insurance because they can afford it. So it doesn't cost them anyway. So it's kind of interesting that a left-wing party wants to reward the rich. I find that interesting. But are you telling me that all the money from capital gains tax is going to be ring-fenced for health? Because if you think that's going to happen, I've got a bridge to sell you. The fact of the matter is, we've been told that about road user charges. We've been told that about our registration fees for vehicles, that it's all going to go on improving roads and roading infrastructure. Once again, that doesn't happen. It goes into a general slush fund, and then it just depends what the topic of the day is, according to the government of the day. So, yeah, I just don't believe that. Still discussion here about this social media ban. And look, ACT aren't that keen on a social media ban for under 16-year-olds. They've got this inquiry at the moment, which is good. We're talking about the issue and we're talking about the problem. And that's the bit that I'm stoked about, because my argument has always been that for too long, big tech, which is Google, Apple, Meta, TikTok, all those ones, they have got away with blue murder. They have targeted our kids. They've sucked kids and they've exposed them to objectionable material, and they have been unregulated. So if this discussion brings about some accountability for big tech, then I'm all for it. And I'm not just going to say, digital ID, we can't talk about this topic anymore. No, I want to have this discussion. Now, the ACT Party, interestingly, they're having this inquiry, and look who's turning up. We've had the boss of Meta. We've had the boss of TikTok actually turn up. Why? Because they know their territory is being threatened, and they've had it so good for so long, and it's time we held them to account. Now, ACT aren't that keen on the ban, so is Labor going to support National with this private members bill that's just been drawn out of the biscuit tin? And look, even in this article that's written in the Post, the Dominion Post, which is in Wellington, Henry Cook, the writer, is basically not that supportive of it. But then he makes this admission. He says, even if the ban works perfectly, locking off under 16s but not infringing on the privacy or usability of the internet for adults, it hardly fixes the problem of harm on social media. Older people will still have their brains fried by ludicrously conspiracy content served up to them by clever algorithms, which highlights the most incendiary posts possible, while their owners claim to be neutral carriers of information. So they're actually admitting that there is a major problem with regulation around what is being pumped through and the way it's being pumped through, the objectionable material and the algorithms. And so I'm all up for this discussion. And this is the question that I keep asking people who immediately say, we can't go down this area, digital ID, we're not even having this discussion. I simply say to them, okay, what is the solution? How do we protect our kids? And how do we hold big tech to account? Do you know that every time on social media I've put that question, I am met with stunning silence? They can't answer the question. But that's the discussion we need to have. Interested to hear your thoughts on that one. Right. Last week it was the Druggy Foundation. This week it's the Helen Clark Foundation, all pro-drugs. And when they release a report saying that we should liberalise our drug laws and they're a health issue, not a crime issue, and we should defund the police from looking at, going after drug users and drug dealers and drug growers, the media immediately rushed to it. And the media pushed this narrative because they're very pro-druggy themselves. So Helen Clark Foundation, which, by the way, is a registered charity but isn't a lobby group, apparently, according to the Charities Commission. So no, they won't be deregistered, even though they're doing exactly the same thing that Family First is doing. But they don't talk about marriage being one man, one woman. So it's okay, they're safe. But anyway, the Helen Clark Foundation put out a report. And so serial campaigner from the New Zealand Herald, Derek Cheng, who, by the way, is very good mates with Helen Clark and even, read posts themselves talking about pro-drugs policies. So that sort of shows you how independent this reporter is. Says, new report says politicians could shift the drug budget to a health focus without voter blowback. Oh, in other words, there's some political advice for parties coming from the New Zealand Herald, compliments of the Helen Clark Foundation. The Post, which is Stuff, they see new research shows public favours health approach in the fight against drugs. And I did laugh at this this little excerpt from Marine Lorenz, the reporter. Ending up in jail did nothing to scare drug user David Strait. In fact, he says he probably used drugs on the way to court and even smoked cannabis in prison. Wow. Well, that's a great reason to decriminalise drugs, isn't it? Anyway, looking at the report. So basically what they found was that we're spending a lot of money on law enforcement because we want to reduce the supply. And we also want to target the drug growers and the drug dealers. Good. And the treatment is 25%. And so their argument is we need to spend more on treatment. I'm not disagreeing with that. We should spend more on addiction services. But that doesn't mean you go liberal on the law. When they actually asked people how they wanted it to be enforced, and as someone has just said, there's already discretion that judges can use. That's true. We've already all but decriminalised, and that judges can say, in the public interest, is it worth going after this person? And the fact of the matter is, there is no one in jail for smoking a joint. There is no one, even though they will try and tell you that. But here's how people want the money to be spent. The problem for the Drug Foundation and the Helen Clark Foundation is that law enforcement and prevention, telling kids just don't do drugs and stuff like that, 36 and 25. So that's, 61%. So 61% of us want this no tolerance approach. And just the treatment is still at 24%, ironically. Remember, it's at 24 now. So it stays at the treatment level. And harm reduction, this liberal harm reduction, how to use meth safely, how to make sure that you don't mix other drugs with certain drugs, how not to have, this is what the Drug Foundation tells high school students, don't use pee after 3 p.m. because you won't be able to get to sleep at night. Yes, I can show you the evidence of that. 16%, just 16% want this liberal approach. So this whole report kind of backfired on the Helen Clark Foundation and the Druggy Foundation and the media. But it's just a reminder. The other funny thing about this report was that this is the quantitative research. They've done a research, what was it, of 1,030 people or something like that. But they also, as part of their, quantitative, but as part of their qualitative research, which means focus groups, they found 10 retirees in Christchurch. Yep, 10 retirees in Christchurch. And that formed part of their research. So that sounds lovely. Lovely cup of tea. Right, let's get on to some other serious stuff. This is a funny photo, isn't it? You've got the church all sitting in the back rows, and then at the front you've got the Labour Party politicians. And apparently there's some complaints about local board politicians going up, and claims have been made with the Auckland Council, where apparently in the Manukau ward, so this is South Auckland, Labour councillors and local board candidates have addressed congregations from the pulpits displaying Vote Labour banners, and in some cases presenting envelopes, which of course is the tithes and offerings. This includes services in Mangere, Otahu, the Congregational Christian Church of Samoa, the Free Wesleyan Church of Tonga. Social media posts show candidates, including Otara Papatoi, local board member, speaking to congregation while holding voting papers. That's one thing I always learned, is that you can't turn up to groups and tell them how to vote as a charity, and churches should not be. These are the churches that would argue separation of church and state, and yet someone comes in and tells you how to vote or who to vote for, and that is a no-no. But of course, we had that Common Grace Aotearoa group as well, telling people how to vote for the Maori wards as well. There should be complaints, and they should be prosecuted, but they won't be, because it's just inconvenient. All right, another. This was a story over the. Sorry, a bit of a croaky throat here. Yeah, apparently this couple, a same-sex couple, they left Trump's America. And they said that what Trump did is make it okay to be intolerant. He made it okay to normalize bigoted views. But when you actually read the article, you actually find that they've been living in an area in Georgia, which actually in the previous 4 years was a blue state, but now it's become a Republican state after the last election. And they go on about the fact that there's this so-called homophobia, and they're an inclusive family, and they want to embrace everyone no matter what their differences are, but they just didn't see their hometown that way, and they were concerned because abortion rights were being rolled back and protection for same-sex marriage felt increasingly fragile, and so they had to get away, and so they decided to come to New Zealand. But what the story doesn't tell you is that all these experiences that they had would have been while who was the president of the United States? President Biden. I mean, Trump has only been president since January, right? And yet, as you can see, they've been living in Georgia for a number of years, and they're going on about all this terrible attitude and non-inclusiveness. And so, they say they want to be inclusive. They want to be inclusive. What do they say? They want to instill the values, and they say in a sick sort of way, I think, thank President Trump for giving me the motivation to finally do what I always wanted to do. Come to New Zealand, apparently. And they're both teachers. So, there's a little warning for you. Speaking of marriage, November the 11th is going to be a very interesting day. I think it's November the 11th, because the Supreme Court is going to be considering a challenge to the gay marriage law, which was rammed through by the US Supreme Court. November the 7th. And they're going to figure out whether to uphold the law, which was called the Obergefell case. It was a 5-4 decision, split decision, which basically redefined same-sex marriage across the whole of the United States. Remember that? Rammed down by the court, activist court, and it's coming back before the Supreme Court. And on November the 7th, the US Supreme Court, 9 justices will consider taking up the case. Now, knowing the makeup of the court, they're likely to revisit it and see whether it was unconstitutional to redefine marriage for the whole of the United States and all 50 states. And the reason that it's coming back before the court is because a marriage clerk, you might remember this name, what's her name? Davis, what was her first name? She was a Kentucky county clerk, and she refused to sign off same-sex marriage. And so it's gone all the way to the Supreme Court. So November the 7th, mark that date in your diary. It's going to be a very interesting date. Meanwhile, back here in New Zealand, One News is promoting research which says that one husband having multiple wives has plus sides. Yep, who would have thought? Only One News could do that, promoting some article from The Conversation. Anyway, they're interested in redefining. Now, on a positive, I just want to say that there was a light-hearted supermarket campaign by New World. It was entitled Meet the Parents, Meet, M-E-A-T, Meet the Parents. And apparently it had a complaint because some complainer, said the advertisement denigrates men based on their gender. The clear implication is that men are incompetent and unable to cook, that's me, and resort to lying about it. Well, not me, because I just don't bother cooking, where cooking is an activity traditionally associated with females. Now, I'm going to show you this ad just so you can judge for yourself whether you think it deserves a complaint and whether it denigrates men. Okay, have a watch.
So this new boyfriend, you better like beef, because I'm doing my famous kebabs.
Dad, he's...
See, the thing about my kebabs is the cuts. You've got to start with the perfect cuts. Get that marinade right down in there, and then the perfect balance of meat and veggie. Oh, paprika. It really kicks it up a notch.
Dad, be nice.
Hey.
Must be the man of the hour. Hope you like my homemade kebabs.
Oops.
Are those beef kebabs?
Yeah.
Did you make them yourself?
Yeah.
Kyle's actually a butcher down New World.
Oh.
They smell wonderful.
Thank you.
Is this paprika, Mr. Paul?
Sure is, Kevin.
Kyle.
Our in-store butchers serve wonderful...
Okay, now that is a funny ad, isn't it? That is a funny ad. I mean, New World pushed back and said, actually, we've got a sense of humour. Good on you, New World. I mean, that's the type of complaints that you deal with. The fact that the Advertising Standards Authority even dealt with the complaint, they should have just sent it back and say, get a sense of humour. But anyway, they went through the process of dealing with it. Another funny thing that happened during the weekend was actually every Republican in the United States did a little jig around the table and had a celebration because Kamala Harris is considering another presidential run. Yeah, excellent. excellent for the Republicans. I bet they're really hoping. But interestingly, Kamala Harris has been traveling around because she's written this book about 107 days that she campaigned after she took over from Biden, because Biden was still asleep as president. And she took over, and she keeps getting asked about why didn't she admit that Biden wasn't up to being president. And she basically tries to argue, this is her current line, she tries to persuade you that being president is different to running for president. And so Biden was awake enough to be president, but he wouldn't have been awake enough to run for president. Yeah? You don't believe me? Have a watch.
Here, I think, at this historical moment you talk about is so important, because there had been months of speculation around the world, here in the UK too, even in April, long before President Biden pulled out. We asked Nancy Pelosi what was going wrong. This was a huge subject of discussion. And you write that President Biden didn't raise his frailty with you, and you write that you didn't really raise it with him. That's extraordinary to read in your account.
Well, let's be more precise. There is a very serious difference between capacity to be president of the United States and the capacity to run for president of the United States.
Really?
But let's be clear, my question was never about his capacity to be president.
But isn't it a strange message to the public to say, you know what, you need to be tougher and more able to run a political campaign than actually to be the person behind the desk in the Oval Office, to be the person making decisions in the Situation Room? So did you just not think it was that bad, or did you feel you just couldn't raise it?
I was concerned about his ability to run for re-election, given what the campaign would require, and requires of any individual, regardless of their age, and to run while being the sitting president of the United States with all of the responsibilities that requires.
With all the sleeping that's required. Okay, anyway, she reckons she's going to run, so anyway, that's good news. Look, I've run out of time. I do just want to do a couple of quick comments here. You guys aren't being very polite, I can tell. Rosie says Kamala is Delulu. Food Dogs Trucking says Kamala running for president again is funnier than the New World ad. Tisha is quite right and said, well, he did cook the meat. It's a great act. Catherine says some people need to grow a funny bone, which is exactly right. And Ian proudly says, I have been, where is that? Where did it go? Here we go. Oh, Michael says, I've been cooking reasonably well for years. Yep, you have exactly right. And Ian, just in relation to that article about the US couple, sad that the child only has two dads, no mum. We will see the sad results in the years to come. Exactly right. All right, we are out of time. Honey, do you want to say hello? Come on, up, say hello, up, come on, up. There we are. Here she is. Here we are. She's ready for a walk. Had a long weekend down at the beach. Okay. Right, there we go. There's your appearance. Okay, don't let it go to your head. Anyway, we're out of time. There was a couple of other stories I wanted to talk about. I did want to tell you this. I will tell you this quickly. Over 650,000 views on Issy and Zara, which is fantastic. On Friday, I'll tell you what the alternative narrative is that the media are pushing, because they don't want to go near Issy and Zara. The New Zealand media do not want anyone to know about Issy and Zara. So please do your job and share their stories. Little update on Candace Owens as well on Friday as well, and a couple of other stories that I haven't quite got to, but we're out of time. So have a great day. Simon O'Connor will be here tomorrow morning for Solid Ground and Political Playback tomorrow night. See you later.